Please, the floor is yours.
Okay, cool. Thank you for the opportunity to share my experience and what I've been doing over the years with different institutions. And I want to say whatever views I expressed here are personally mine, and it doesn't reflect the organizations I've been working with. So basically, I need to have that facts established. So let's get going, and let's talk about anti-corruption initiatives in Afghanistan. As we might have known, Afghanistan is one of the countries that have gone through conflict for over decades, and one of the challenges as a conflict country, it's one of the main challenges of that country as in terms of governance is how they've been pushing to tackle corruption. So basically, that's what I will be discussing today. So on the agenda, about myself, then I will give an introduction on Afghanistan and the social structure of trust building, corruption and anti-corruption initiatives, and community development approaches to development, and we'll have a Q&A session. So about myself, I'm a planning, monitoring, and reporting specialist with over 11 years of experience in Sierra Leone, Afghanistan, and the Democratic Republic of Congo. I've been working on projects in different governance areas. I've worked on peace building, anti-corruption, humanitarian actions as well. And then I've been contributing in these areas to eradicate poverty, to ensure there is equal inclusion in governance and livelihood activities. Yeah, I hold master's degrees. I hold different master's degrees in different fields. So basically, I've been all over the place, kind of. So, Afghanistan, the introduction, basically, as we can see from my presentation, Afghanistan, according to the Transparency International Index report, it's a report that comes out every year in terms of what international practitioners, development practitioners, and nationals think about how they perceive corruption. So this index report has been going on for years now. So Afghanistan was ranked 173 out of 180 countries and territories as in terms of the corruption ranking. That was as of 2019, and then it's a concern in Afghanistan basically, and there has been significant work in terms of anti-corruption initiatives. There's a quote you can see by the president, which says corruption has really done a significant damage to the country in terms of it has fueled constant conflict, social division, institutional controls. In terms of donor funds that have gone into the country has not been adequately utilized since after the overthrow of the Taliban in late 2020 and 2001. So basically, President Ghani made that quotation in 2016. And there has been tremendous effort in terms of what international development partners can do, because there has been a lot of surveys, national surveys done, which indicates that corruption has really had significant dent on the economy of the country, the livelihood of people. And so donors felt it's been something they should consider seriously. And they have been putting a lot of money and initiatives, putting up a lot of initiatives in an effort to tackle corruption in this country. So I'll be also discussing about the initiatives. And based on that, you can see Afghanistan is still ranked among other countries in that part of the world as poor, because research and studies have proven that a lot of development interventions have fallen aside based on the corruption. They've not been able to meet their intended purposes. So that's why international development partners, especially the UN mission, international agencies have really put in a lot of emphasis on how to step up initiatives in terms of fighting corruption in that part of the world. So before at a global platform, we can see that Afghanistan have signed some number of treaties that focuses on they've signed global treaties that focuses on how they can move alongside other countries in terms of fighting corruption. One was done in 2023, the UN Convention Against Corruption, which was signed in 2014. It was rectified in 2018. And the first cycle focused on criminalization and law enforcement, international cooperation, on how South-South cooperation, I could say, and large recommendations on how they can improve, like the penal code, which was adopted in 2017. And as of now, they are within the second phase of the UN Convention on Corruption, which focuses on the preventive measures and asset recovery so basically, if you are found wanting of corruption, they have to use legal settlements and they try to recover the money or funds or whatever that has been used that went through corruption in terms of recovery of assets. Basically, I come from Sierra Leone, and that has also been an initiative that I think is a global initiative now, which most anti-corruption institutions or agencies or government is pushing towards. They are out-of-court settlement measures they can look into. They will call, if you are found wanting of corruption, they would say, okay, we can settle it out of court. We can go to court and recover your properties and those sort of things. So as well in Afghanistan, that initiative is also ongoing. And then we come to another framework that was signed, the Geneva Mutual Accountability Framework, yes, which is co-hosted by Afghanistan and the UN. It was done in 2018. It provided a high-level forum to interact on the need of Afghanistan in terms of tangible results in combating corruption. The international community and the governments had 6 benchmarks in terms of what should be met before the conference, and this included 175 arrests and summoned. Anti-Corruption Justice Center was established. Partners agreed to have a joint communique in terms of benchmarks that will be met prior to the conference. So there's also another initiative like the US Embassy and the Resolute Support to Afghanistan Compact. Basically, it aims at supporting the government of Afghanistan in the areas of economic growth, governance, security, peace, and reconciliation. But all these factors are kind of like subset. They're kind of like their success is basically linked on governance and how it's run, and specifically in terms of this the focus was anti-corruption kind of. Each month, like the Afghanistan government provides progress reports of benchmarks agreed bilaterally with the working group, with the US Embassy in terms of where they are, what has been done, what are the challenges. So basically, if they have challenges, they can discuss and ways on how to combat these challenges. But having said the country's commitment in terms of international treaties, in terms of fighting corruption, there are also legal instruments or legal frameworks that really support the anti-corruption drive in the country. So basically, when you look at the legal instrument, even the Afghanistan Constitution made provisions for anti-corruption initiatives, because like I said initially, that has been an issue and it's a governance issue, and it has had a lot of impact on society and it's the Afghan citizens as well. So there are these legal frameworks. We have the national constitution. We have the law campaign against bribery and official corruption. We have the national strategy for combating corruption. We have the penal code. We have the anti-corruption law. And most recently we had, because there were issues where people can report corruption and they are not protected, their identities are not protected, and it comes back to fight them. As we know, corruption always fight back. And when it's fighting back, it can be gruesome. So they thought it fit that people who blow the whistle against corruption, who bring corruption activities to the notice of the government or people in authority, can be protected. They need to be protected as well. So they have a whistleblowing protection law, and they have the asset declaration law, basically mostly for people in public services and public governance institutions. So once you are appointed into governance institutions or public service, you have to declare your assets. This gives them an idea of where they met you. You can't accumulate wealth overnight and say, oh, I have been working. So in order to avoid those sort of situations, they have like the asset declaration law, which is been implemented. Then the access to information, as we might have understood from happenings around the world, people perish or people really suffer the penalties of corruption when they don't have access to information. So the access to information law is also very active. So basically, these are the national anti-corruption initiatives in terms of legal frameworks in Afghanistan. And then based on the legal frameworks, there have been national institutions, independent institutions actually established to oversee corruption initiatives, where people can reach out for complaints, where people can reach out for where people can address, where people can actually complain if they face corruption, where people can be tried if they are guilty or they are accused of corruption, and those sort of things. So most of these independent institutions are basically being supported mostly by international donors. One is the Independent and Joint Anti-Corruption M&E Committee. Basically, it oversees development intervention projects, whether they are implemented as intended, whether the impact is actually feasible. So basically, they look at government development interventions. We have the Anti-Corruption Justice Center. This is where high-level anti-corruption cases are tried. And then we have the Access to Information Commission, the Ombudsman, and High Council of Rule of Law and Anti-Corruption, and the Civil Service Reform Civil Service Commission. So basically, these are these are independent anti-corruption related institutions or related institutions that are fighting to reform issues based on research. For example, the civil service, there are a lot of researches that have been done which have proven that there was an issue of corruption in terms of recruitment, corruption in terms of promotion, and the retirement. People differ retirement ages as the case may be. So those are the independent institutions. And then the civil society has also been a key player in terms of governance reforms, peace building and governance reforms in Afghanistan. And basically, they've also been supporting government initiatives. They've also been supporting international development partners in terms of how they can support these arms of government to see, because their presence in communities have a significant impact. So basically, they have been playing three key roles. The Open Government Partnership, which is a global partnership in terms of doing things the right way, in terms of monitoring government activities, in terms of ensuring corruption initiatives inside government are minimized or stopped. And they have been participating in that platform. They have been pushing for policy making and monitoring. Like all the legal instruments I told you about, they've been pushing, they really played significant role in terms of getting these passed in parliament and being enacted as a law or a policy. So they've also been involved in the most important part of their work. For me, I really experienced whilst I was there, is the advocacy and reporting part of it, because I saw basically where they used, they had community sessions, they used radio and TV programs, they developed billboards to see how best they can pass on the message that you can't do this is unacceptable. They led campaigns of what I refer to as journey mappings. Journey maps are basically like, for example, if you want to secure a passport, they have to chronologically outline the procedure of securing a passport instead of going through the back door, because those are things. For example, acquiring a marriage certificate was kind of also, the process was kind of it was difficult because there were different intermediaries, so people didn't have adequate knowledge on what are the legal procedures. So the civil society also was engaged in educating people on those sort of things. Yes, I want to talk about community approach to development in terms of what I've explained and how it has been linked to corruption, anti-corruption initiatives. So basically, these 8 approaches to community development in terms of anti-corruption has really brought an eye-opener to the people of that beautiful country called Afghanistan. And the work of the civil society has enabled these approaches to be functional in terms of effective participation, citizens' participation. For example, if government wants to undertake development initiatives based on their governance structure, they've ensured civil society has raised awareness to ensure that they are actually a participatory process, an asset-based process. For example, I want to do a road construction in some part in Afghanistan. I won't wake up in the morning and go tell the people we are bringing this asset in terms of this is what we have now. They should basically be in the face of every part. They should be in every cycle of the whole development intervention. It should be area-based. Like they are trying to decentralize development in terms of they have to look at the area-based approach to development. It doesn't have to be focused on the bigger cities. They are also taking into consideration peripheral areas, because these are the people who are actually, in terms of economic factors, who are disadvantaged. So they are moving that community economic development. So they have to basically, all these approaches have to basically sit with the people and tell them it's a right-based approach. They have to, in terms of development, one size doesn't fit all. So basically you have to re-engage the people. Is this a right-based approach to development? What do you think? Spiritual, psychosocial approach, what is basically, is the development, is it a welfare approach? So basically, these are the forms of approaches that are being used in terms of reducing or minimizing how development interventions go through a lot of people. At the end of the day, it doesn't yield the intended purpose. So those are the things I wanted to talk about. And I will give the floor to you. And I'm happy to take your questions and we can discuss.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for that, Beamie. It's a very interesting, engaging presentation. We only have a few minutes left, it turns out, but we can quickly go into the questions and see if anyone would like to ask anything. So I'll just unmute everybody. Yes, so does anyone have any questions?
I have more of a technical question, if you don't mind, Beamie. This is Giacomo.
Yeah.
What is the... Is there any tips or effective ways that you could bring up to us that would help explain the best way to localize these programs so that it's not totally a Western intervention, but at the same time you're focusing on the fact that you know that there could be corruption that could exacerbate the situation?
Thank you very much. Okay, so just to address that question, like during my presentation, I said the part in the fight against corruption I really enjoyed most whilst I was working in Afghanistan is the civil society engagement, because they are actually the intermediary between the government, development partners, and the people. So basically, these anti-corruption initiatives are cascaded at community level to the lowest. So basically, for example, they did jingles and anti-corruption jingles because people don't have an idea what are the procedures to acquire national services or public services like passport, marriage certificate, even a driver's license. So basically, the role of the civil society has been so much visible in the fight against corruption in that part of the world. So that's why development partners, even when they are engaged in the national government at policy level and those sort of things, at grassroots level, the civil society has been the main focal point because they are involved in a lot of awareness raising, they are involved in publications, they are involved in research. So those research has been used to improve the government or development partners' intervention in corruption because they are actually with the people, they actually have a conversation with them, they live with them, so they are able to better report issues these people are facing in terms of the impact of corruption. And once those issues are brought to the light, innovative and development interventions are designed based on those informations. So basically, I would say the civil society has been using the local development approach, community development approach in terms of giving out anti-corruption, building on people, civic education, in terms of passing on in messages, in terms of educating people, in terms of even doing the journey mapping. Apparently, these are done in local languages. So basically, they are really cascading anti-corruption initiatives at a grassroots level. So at the end of the day, even the least man in the most remote part of the country has an idea. And these selections of there has been some areas that say, there have been researches that say this area, this part of the governance structure is the most corrupt. So basically they focus on those areas. So this research is done by independent scholars or independent institutions or civil society organizations are being cascaded as well. They bring it to light. They say this institution, this wing of governance is corrupt. So we have to focus on this part of governance, immigration, those sort of things. Sort of example. So basically, it's been cascaded as grassroots level, using the civil society approach.
This is very
as opposed to the Western approach.
My apologies, we only have 3.5 minutes left, but I just wanted to see, does anyone else have any further questions on this very excellent and engaging presentation very quickly?
Yes, I do have a question.
Go ahead, Nikolai.
First of all, thank you for the very insightful presentation. And my question is related to the Taliban-controlled part of Afghanistan. I would like to know, to what extent does corruption also stem from that part of the country? Because with other issues in the country, many of them have their root in that area. For example, the drug trade has its roots largely in that area. So I would be curious, to what extent does the Taliban-controlled area influence corruption in overall Afghanistan?
Thank you very much for your question. And just a quick, I have to be very short in terms because we are time limited. Basically, like the national civil society, they are based in these areas, and basically they have a good relationship with every wing of government, regardless of where they are based. So these drives, they've conducted studies which have indicated this wing of governance is corrupt, which covers this part of the country, which covers the other part of the country. So basically they are using the same approach because their presence are within these locations where they are predominantly run by the governance structure differs from the national government.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. This has been a very engaging presentation. So, Mr. Beamie-Moses Seiwoh, I just want to say thank you once again for participating in Understanding MENA and providing your excellent expertise on Afghanistan. I think that it was very engaging. I certainly hope to have you back as a guest in the future as well, because I think there's a lot more to talk about. So thank you very much, and Thank you to everyone else as well for coming. Nikolai from King's College, Giacomo from UNICEF, thank you all for your time. I was very happy with this. Thank you so much. Does anyone else want to add any final words? I think we have about 60 seconds left if anyone wants to quickly say anything.
Just thank you, Beamie, for taking the time out to come over and speak to us.
Definitely.
Thank you very much, too.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thanks very much, everyone. Have a wonderful start to the weekend. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you very much and have a great time.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye.